Bruchem Obom Shem Hashem Shem Egen Shirtel Yakov. Welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Smith Shlita on the watch and halacha. Thank you, Rabbi Yakov, to Rabbi Eisner for sponsoring today's shir. Linshmas Imoy Vishahinda Basar Chaim of Shalom to Nishmos Tzur B'Tzur Chaim. Today's the outside. As we also sponsoring a shir called Egen Shirtel 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Rabbi Smith.
Shaila Bach was getting married, and his shver gave him a automatic wind-up watch. In other words, basically you wear it, instead of winding it and doesn't go with the battery, it winds as you walk. And he was going to the shver for Yomtov. We wanted to know if you're allowed to wear it on a 2-day Yomtov, a 3-day Yomtov, because inevitably he's winding the watch as he goes. Then I had a different shaila from a different chassan. He got a gold watch, very expensive gold watch. Could he wear it even on Shabbos, even if there's no Erev? These are shver problems we have with, he's going to the shver, he's afraid not to wear it. And the third question, if someone has a regular watch, and let's say he's within an Erev, and the watch broke. So he asked what to do. To take off a broken watch might be considered muktzah. So taking it off, you're moving muktzah. But then again, wearing a broken watch might also be like muktzah. Is it kalachayad? Is it considered tilta biyadayim? So as we'll see, we have probably close to 20 different shilas regarding the watch on Shabbos or Yomtov. Today they have solar-powered watches, and we'll talk about changing the time of a timepiece, winding a toy, winding a swing, and we'll touch upon basically 3 major sugyas: the sugya of tikkun keli, chaitzah, and muktzah. But the truth is, what makes this sugya challenging, and probably the right word is gishmak, because when something is challenging in Torah, it's gishmak. Up until Kamat 100 years ago, they didn't have wristwatches. They didn't wear wristwatches. Now they had clocks, and they had grandfather clocks, and desk clocks, and they had pocket watches. They had plenty of time device pieces. But the concept of the wristwatch that we have today, I did a little research, is just about 1925 Lemisvarim, when they started using it in a more common way. So you're not going to find the wristwatch, not in Gemara, not in Mishayim, not in Shulchan Aruch, not in Mishnah even. Mishnah speaks about a wall clock and a pocket watch, but there's no mention of a simple wristwatch. So we have to really try to look at the Yisayidis and apply it to our wristwatch. So first I must make 2 points. The halachos of today are negayah to Yomtov, just like Shabbos. Don't forget tikkun keli and muktzah apply to Yomtov. Okay, haitzah was a little more lenient. And also, even if you don't wear a watch, but as we'll see, we touch upon the major yisayidis that, as we're going to see, of tikkun keli, haitzah, and of course muktzah. So I think the point that you have to clarify, the one nakuda that we have to try to understand, is a watch that stopped going, it's not working, either because the battery burnt out, or it needs to be wound again, the power reserve has depleted. A watch that's no longer working, but could be wound up, is that considered a broken watch? In other words, we know the Isaf Tikkun Keli is even a simple repair. For example, the glasses fell out of the screw fell out of his glasses, so now the temple is separate from the actual glasses. So to put the screw back, even if you could do it, you don't need an uman to do it, but to put the screw in and attach the temple of the glasses to the glass itself is an issa of tikkun keli. In fact, with Shema Yiska, you can't even use it without screwing it in. Tikkun keli is lav dafka, a builder with a hard hat. It's any type of a correction, repair of a keli. So now the shaila is, this watch for some reason is not going. Or maybe Taki, you didn't wind it before Shabbos. The question is an Isaf Tikkun to wind it on Shabbos? I mean, the truth is, you look at it and you see that it wasn't going. After you wound it, it is going. So is a form of Tchiyas HaMeisim. Is that considered Tikkun Keli? Or maybe you'll say, wait a minute, a watch, that's the way a watch works. You wear it, then you have to wind it. But can we really honestly say that a watch that's not going is broken? And here's the point that we have to clarify. The quote, the slang lashon, if it ain't broke, you can't fix it, but we'll be more proper. If it's not broken, you can't fix it. If the watch that's not going is not considered broken, then it can't be tikkun keli. You can't use it as it is. So then I'll give you a few mishalim. You'll understand. A plate, a china, that you, after the Suda, you can't use it as it is. You have to wash it. Did anybody say that washing a plate is tikkun keli? You can't use it when it's not clean. But the Mishnah is beferish. You're allowed to wash dishes on Shabbos as long as it's for use on Shabbos. So why isn't washing dishes an issa of tikkun keli? Teres is pashit. The plate is not broken. That's derech tashmisha. You use it and you wash it. Maybe you watch the same thing. I'll give you a better mashal. When they started making thermometers to take temperature, so the shaila was that after, let's say a child has a high fever Friday evening, 103 the mashal. So you want to take the temperature a few hours later to see if the fever broke. But if you don't shake it down, if you keep it at 103, it's not going to be an accurate reading because it doesn't go down. So there was some person that said that shaking down the thermometer is a problem of tikkun keli, because you can't use it as it is. But most poskim say it's not broken. That's the derech tashmish. You don't buy a thermometer for one-time use. So shaking down the thermometer is not a problem of tikkun keli. Maybe a watch also. That's the way you use it. And I'll give you even a better mashal. The Shulchan Aruch in Shin Yud Gimel Sivav discusses what today is very popular. Let's make it a more common shaila for us. A person has a table and one leg disconnected. It fell off. So of course you're not allowed to repair that leg to the table. That's a tikkun keli. In fact, some say you're not allowed to use the whole table, even with 3 legs, because you might repair it. So now I'll ask you what sounds like a funny question, but it's not funny. Let's say suddenly you had unexpected guests, and you need a bigger table. So run to the basement, and you bring up the sukkah table that you folded away and use it once a year on sukkahs. So you look at the table, it's folded in half, there's no legs. What do you have to do? Open the table and tighten it, then open the legs, and then you have a fold-up table. Why isn't using a fold-up table, chair, or bed considered tikkun keli? Maduch, you can add 1 leg to a table, that's tikkun keli. Here I'm taking from a folded item, it doesn't even resemble a table, and I'm making a table. But the Mechaber says you're allowed to use a fold-up item because it's one piece. Now the same Mechaber says that if you have a mita shel tasiyim, which is a Gemara, which basically means that when they used to travel, so they would have a bed that was made with pieces. They assembled it when they wanted to go sleep. The next morning when they woke up, they took apart the pieces, put it in the knapsack, and they traveled. I guess they don't have a mattress. But that mita shel tasiyim is chayiv chatos, because you're assembling a bed. So why is a fold-up bed, chair, or table mutter? Teretz is, if it's not broken, you can't fix it. If it's one piece that its mode is to fold it and open it, it's not broken. So here we see 3 mashalim that even though you really, in a certain sense, you're making something, you're making a usable plate, a thermometer, and a table, but if it's not broken, you can't fix it. I'll give you another mashal. You blow up a balloon. The only problem with blowing a balloon is because you might come to make a knot, and that's a kesher. That's a kesher that's going to stay. But no one says blowing the balloon is a tikkun keli. Teretz says that's the way it's used. You blow it, and you take out the air. So the question very simply is a clock, a watch that's not working, and you wind it, are you being misaken keli? If it is, you can't do it. If for some reason this is the derech tashmishay, then there should not be a problem. So again, they didn't have wristwatches, but I'm going to tell you what the Panim Me'iris, I think the first that discusses this, in Chelik Beis, Kuf Chav Gimel, he discussed what's called a Moira Shois, which basically is the Lashon HaKodesh term for a watch. Today they call it Sha'on, that's a Hebrew word. But basically he's talking about a clock, and it's interesting, we think we have funny tumbles. There was a scandal about a Rav that he would move the clock, I guess it was a desk clock, to see what time it is. And the quote the Lashon, he used to speak many hours, 3 hours, that's Berech, but he didn't want to speak more than that, als Tircha de Tzibura. They used to speak 3 hours, but not more, Tircha Tzibura. Kama shois, yeah, but not more than kama shois. So he used to move the watch, the desk clock, to see what time it is. And the ganze Vayitzaku. The Mechaber Shin Ches Sif Nun Aleph quoting a Maril that Mashamoir ala Shoyis, you're not allowed to move on Shabbos, the minig is to Asa because it's muktzah. And how could this Rav move the clock? So someone told this shayil, what do you mean? But ein lecha adam she'ein lo isha. Everybody moves clocks. So he goes, yeah, but it's us. The Shulchan Aruch says, I one Rav Paskin, he's a Zaken Mamre. That was the end of him. But the Chayra Maril, the Shulchan Aruch says you can't move a Moira Shois. So the Panamiris explains, look, why don't you look carefully, look up the Machaba, look in the Maril, you'll see the Pshat. The Maril was Chaysh that a Moira Shois was a question of Medida, measuring. Now, what are you measuring with a clock or watch? They used to have a sand dial that will tell the time, or measure time. An hour, let's say a 3-hour speech was this clock. So then you're measuring time, that's Medida, and therefore it's muktzah. But our clocks are not measuring sand, it's just the time is going. There's no problem of muktzah. So even if when you learn Shulchan Aruch, you'll see Shin Ches Nun Aleph, clock is muktzah, that's a sand dial, but not our clocks. Oh. But then the Panamira says, by the way, not only you're allowed to move the clock, but I believe that even allowed to wind it, in those days it was not like wind like today, but they were pulling a string to make the chain. But I believe you're allowed to even wind the shalsheles on Shabbos, because Lamaisa, Mida the Havi Amiter, that we said, that case of the bed, the folding bed, and Maduch Vi, you're making a bed, it's mutter, because it's all one piece, and it is a normal tishtamshus. So too, says the Panameiros, and he's very confident that the Leidati Shum Issa Bezeh Midi. Midi Havi Amita Refuyi, that's Mutter. And he seems to be learning out the Heta of Derech Tashmishay. And at the end he repeats himself, Ledaiti Heta Gomor, and don't worry. So we have a Panameiros to wind the clock, presumably, even when it stopped working, it was not broken. However, there are Machmirim, and Choshev Machmirim, I should mention. The Prima Godim in Shin Ches Ayin Ches, quoting the Panameiros, he says, Am Chayshish van Issa Torah. Because Lamaisa, you are making from a dysfunctional clock to a functional clock. Now it's working. The Prima Godim just says it misvar, but Prima Godim calls it a Chashash Deraisa. But a later God, L'chayodim in Memdalid Yutes, found a Gemara that seems to be a source for the Issa of winding a watch. Now you listen to the Raya and you see what you think. The Gemara in Erevin Kuf Gimel speaks about a harp, a kinnor, that you have to adjust it. In other words, you can't just play an instrument on a string. It has to be exactly the right position, top and bottom. And this loosened and you can't use it as it is. So the Gemara says that you can't tighten, you can't adjust this harp on Shabbos. Why not? Tikkun Keli. So Maduch, you're not allowed to adjust a harp. So Unsadrein, that's the word he uses. Undrein, a clock, and right now it's not working at all. It would be asa to do it as Tikkun Keli, and even to ask a guy to wind the clock is asa. So what he's saying is that just like you can't repair a harp, you can't repair the watch. So he's saying basically that a clock that's not working is indeed broken. Now the Maisa, there is a big makam lachalik between a clock and a harp. A harp is broken. It's made to stay and not supposed to disconnect. If it's broken, and more so you need a Maisa Uman to repair it, that could be Tikkun Keli. But Taina, the Tiferes Yisrael and Kekela Shabbos, Makapatish Simon Lamed Ches, if he quotes the Shita of the Raya from the Gemara in Erevin, he says, but a clock, that's the way it's used. You wind it, it goes for a few hours, and then you have to wind it again. So he's back to square one. If it's not broken, you can't fix it. There's a very beautiful, very thorough tshuva, and the tshuva's Hara Carmel Simon Aleph. It's printed at the end of the tshuva's Dvar Shmuel. And he's also Mekel, it's not Makabah Patish, it's not broken. And the Chazanish in Nun Ois Tes quotes the Chayodam, and he says, I don't believe the problem is Al Makabah Patish, because it's not broken. But the Chazanish does say there is a problem with winding a watch, because Lamaisa, as his Lashon is, you're being miyatzer, you're creating a koyach chodosh, yitzer koyach chodosh. Till now the watch is not working, now it's working. So that's a form of makabah patish. It's not the winding of the watch, but it's making the watch go from non-functional to functional. Maybe he calls it boina or makaba patish. But the emphasis, the Ksav Soifa, the Yeridei Simon Nunhei, in Archaim Nunhei, is also Mekel for the same reason. And what I found interesting, that the Tshuva Mehava, that's the Talmud Muvag of Noida Behuda, Chelik Beis Amud Yud Ches, he says, this can't be that the normal Ishtamshus is considered a Issa of Makava Patish. And he gives a funny mashal, but you think about it, it's a very penetrating mashal. Let's say you have a clarinet, and you pick it up on Shabbos and you blow it. Is that an Issa D'Oraisa? Chas v'sholom. Why can't you play an instrument on Shabbos? It's D'Rabbanan, Shemi Yisak and Klei Shir. Frek the Tshuva Mehava, why don't we say it's Makava Patish? Because the clarinet lays on the table, it doesn't make noise. So when you're blowing it, you're activating it. So you can't play instruments, it's a Melacha D'Oraisa? Teretz says, no, if that's the Derech Ishtamshus, it's not considered Makava Patish. He used a mashal of a clarinet. I think a balloon is also a good mashal. No one says blowing a balloon is Makava Patish. And that's why I could say many Paiskim, there's a Ber Moshe in Chelik Beis, the end of Siman Chav, quotes from the Marshag that was Mekel, because it's any child could wind a watch. Lamaisa, it's interesting, although we have a great case to say that winding a watch that stopped is mutter lechatchila, but the Mishtabura in Shin Lamed Ches Sif Tezvav, he says that loimi boy, that if it stopped, you can't wind it, because there is a Torah lakama paiskim. In other words, he's choishish for the Prima Godim and the Chayodam, and he quotes like kapanim me'iray shemekel bezeh. And I must mention again, even though there are many makilim, but the Shevet Alevi and Dalad Yud Beis, the Rabbi Yashiv's Shuvas Dalad Lamid, Mincha Shloima Aleph Tes, all say if the Mishtabura choish for the Raisa, that has become halacha l'maisa. We don't wind a watch that stopped working. So that's step number one. What's much more challenging, and more gishmak, is winding a watch now that's still going. In other words, let's say your watch typically runs for 24 hours. And typically you always wind it right before Licht Sinin, so it should go for whole Shabbos. This Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, you forgot. So you calculated, the last time you winded it was Friday morning. Shabbos morning, it's all over. It's going to be dead. Can you wind it now, Friday night, when it's going, so it will stay for Shabbos? Now, we're not talking about, it's not a chana, you're doing it for Shabbos, and, whatever's extra is mechaber to make a chana. This is more unavoidable on a 2 or 3 day Yomtov. Let's say some watches go for 36 hours, but none go for 48 or 72 hours, so you need to do something to wind a watch. But here the mile is, it's already going, so the question is, if it's going, it's certainly not broken. If it's not broken, you can't fix it. So the emes is, it could be even the machmirim, the prima godim, and the chayodam that asked winding a watch that stopped would be makel if it's going. Now, but this is a unique situation, because lamais, you do want to give it more energy. You want it to, otherwise it's going to stop. So you're giving like a tikkun al haba. It's like, a layaway plan for a tikkun. So we could definitely say in Svar it makes sense, it's mutter, but we don't work with Svaras, we have to find rayas. So shimu suchin afshechem. In Yeridei Simon Samach Tesif Yud Beis, halacha is if you shecht an animal and you have to salt it, we call kasher within 3 days. If you don't salt the kasher within 3 days, the meat is awesome. It's only mutter if you roast it and get out the blood, but you can't cook it. So the Shulchan Aruch, the Paiskim discuss the following question. Let's say you shechted 12 o'clock Wednesday afternoon. Shabbos, 12 o'clock, the meat's going to become awesome, because he didn't salt it before Shabbos. So right now it's Friday night and he's all panicky. If I don't do something with it soon, the meat's going to be awesome. Can he wash the meat? He'll wash his hands, he'll shadayim and wash over the meat. He'll put water on the meat. And halacha is the next sif, in Samach Tes Sif Yud Gimel, if you rinsed it, then it's not awesome. You have another 3 days to kasher it. So here, think about it, you have a similar situation. The meat right now is okay. Tomorrow it's going to be awesome. Is it shaykh tikkun by putting water tonight to save from Gam Gasa tomorrow? So the Yerab and Shin Ches Sif Katan Ayin, and more emphatically than Behuda in a beautiful tshuva in Tinyana Simon Chav Zayin, don't even consider it a problem of tikkun. Now, Yehuda's main focus is if the meat is muktzah, so you can't do a pula to the meat. But the Rabbi says it clearly that right now the meat is okay. What's your problem? And he compares it to halacha and Shulchan Aruch. If you have cut vegetables that you want to keep them fresh, cut them before Shabbos, you're allowed to put it in water. Because right now it's not spoiled. It's a preventive approach. So isn't this analogous to our case? You're winding the watch Friday night, it's working. So how's shaykh tikkun? It's like putting water on the meat. Now, the Yehuda doesn't make this connection, but the Shalom Meshav in Shisisa, Siman and Gimel, who's makel about winding a watch, rather, like we saw earlier, like other paiskim, but he says this yisoid. He compares it to the case of watering the meat on Shabbos. That's mutter. So to here, but then he says a goyin is shavard. Even if you hold like some shittas that you can't put water on the meat Friday night, that's asa because it's a tikkun that I understand because this meat is asa right now. It has blood in it. Meat and blood there's no good connection. Navas, you could kasher it and get it out, but right now it's asa. So maybe being madiach the meat is a form of tikkun because there is a problem with the meat. But this watch is perfectly functional. What's the problem? So we have one good svara that when a watch is going, it's even better than the meat that needs a little rinsing. But we on a Shabbos clock. Oh, that's all different because the other you're keeping it going. Okay, good. There's a question of mimar, but more of keep up. Okay, that's a good point. Hope to do that a different share. Timers and alarm clocks is a whole share for itself. But good stuff. Now, but we could even do better. Listen to a perfect dimion. The Trumas Hadeshet and Simon Memches discusses a question that comes up in many forms. But Bekitz lets you have a tefillin that one of the letters are puzzle, mamish puzzle. So you can't just repair it like by Sefer Torah, because halachos has to be kasidra. So if it's puzzle, you can't correct it. Trumas Hadeshet was there. Let's say you have a lettering on tefillin and it's fading. It's getting lighter and lighter. Right now it's kosher, but if you wait 6 months, it's going to fade. It's going to be puzzle. Can you now go take a quill, a pen, and go over the lettering so it could stay for many years? Or maybe it's like Kisidron. What do you mean? Right now it's kosher. No problem. You're not masaking it. It's preventive. You're allowed to do it now to keep it later. This is a raya that winding a watch that's going is not a problem. Because right now you're just giving it energy to go weiter, but it never broke. And we're back to square one. If it's not broken, you can't fix it. Here again, I must say that our paisik, the Mishnah in the next line, says even when it's going, since Chayodam and the Shari Tshuva are machmer, and he quotes Mishnah Rabbi Kiva, that's Kivege's Zayda, you can't wind the watch even when it's going. Now, Lemaisa, spoke to someone who knows about watches, that when a watch is fully wound, it is more efficient, and also the mechanism is maintained. When a watch is going on low in energy, it deteriorates the quality of the watch. So maybe in a certain sense we can understand when the power reserve is almost depleted, maybe there's something wrong with the watch because it doesn't have full energy. And that's probably would explain why Taki the Mishnah was machmir. The Chazinish and Dinam and Haggis, Yud Gimel, Yud Tes, the Chalkas Yakov, or Chayim Pei Tes, or machmir, like Mishnah, not to wind the watch even when it's going. But I must add, the Munkach and Dake Chayim V'Shalom, Ois Yud Tes, Ois Tov Yud Tes, says that he rather held that it's mutter to wind it when it's going, but he asked someone else to do it. But he felt Miyikadin it's mutter to wind the watch that's going. The Orletzion, Lambetes, Beis, and the Abi Oim that I mentioned are also makel. So we could say that when the watch stopped, all the paisik you can't wind it. If it's still going, the Mishnah our paisik is machmir, but the arm akilim. When this becomes more challenging is a self-winding watch. Now let me just say basically what it is watches can either go with a battery that goes for hopefully a year or so. There's a watch that you have to wind, and again it goes 36, whatever, depending on the quality of the watch. They design, it's interesting, when did they design it? I saw a tshuva from the Chalkas Yakov, they did tough race Sadik test, 1939. Less than 15 years after they started using wristwatches, they upgraded it to automatic watches. So it's not a new thing. 1939, they had the automatic watches. So the shaila is about wearing a automatic watch. Because basically, every movement, you're winding it. So it's almost unavoidable that you're winding a watch on Shabbos. And Taka, the Oz Nidbru Chelik Beis Lambetes says, what's the head to wear an automatic watch? It's inevitably a tikkun mana of winding a watch. Now, of course, if you hold, you're allowed to wind a watch that's going, so this is no different. We're talking about like those that are makel, those that are machmir. So the Chalkas Yakov in Archaim Siman Kuf Yud Gimel, he says that this is a really only winding kalachayad as you move. So he calls it a psik reisha in two derabbanans. First of all, the whole winding when the watch is going can't be a deraisa because it's not broken. So psik reisha in two derabbanans is okay. That's what he wants to say. Taina ti oz nidbru, and the Chari has a good taina. He says temua ma'oid, the Chalkas Yaakov temua ma'oid. This is not kalachayad. This is the normal way of doing it. You know, you want to wind, you buy a regular watch. But this is the normal mode of winding it. In fact, he says something very exquisite. It's maybe not even a psik reisha. Maybe it's a ma'aseh b'yadayim. Psik reisha means you do something, someone else result. This is the way to do it. And that's why l'ma'aseh, it's really hard to say that this is a shinui. It's not a shinui. It's not kalachayad. I mean, it's kalachayad, maybe literally, but not in halacha. But there is a different side to be made, a beautiful einfall, that basically the first of all we could say, well, if some hold you can even wind a watch that's going, you know, even with Yadayim. But I saw Rabbi Zalman and Shmir Shabbos Chof Ches Nun Zayin, no Har Nun Zayin. He says that the starting point is you have to have a ma'aseh tikkun to say something is awesome. Now, when you wind a watch, there is a ma'aseh tikkun, you're winding it. But something like this, a tnua kala that a person does, and he does it hundreds of times a day, is it logical to say he made hundreds of tikkun manas during the day? In other words, what he says is that when something is like as simple as this, that you're not even doing a ma'aseh of tikkun, so it can't be broken. If you have a watch that you have to wind every 36 hours, we'll say when it stopped, maybe it's broken. But this way of using is whenever you move, it winds it. So you can't say it's constantly being fixed if it's not broken. He does say if you pick up the watch when it's not working, you left it Thursday afternoon, you forgot the Shabbos, you pick it up and you put it on your hand and you say automatic work, wind, you go. That's not good. Because picking it up already starts to wind it. But his point is that something as frequent as this, that's the way it's used, is never broken. Winding it, if you need winding, you might say that's a tikkun. But automatic is not a tikkun at all. And then I saw the Shevet Alevi, Chelik Gimel, Simon Tzadik Zayin. He has an incredible approach, and he says this chiddush with Greisa Places. The Shulchan Aruch, the Shoyel asked this Shevet Alevi in Shin Ches Sif Mem Vav, the Mechaber quotes a Rashba. Got a strange case, but it has a lot of relevance to our sugya. They used to want to produce silk, as in a silk tie. So they had silkworms, and the silkworms produced silk ties. But they had worms, the beginnings, the zera of toiloyim, the beginnings of these worms, and you had to keep it warm, incubated, so to speak. So they kept it on the underarm in a place that it was warm on the body. So the body warmth would stimulate these zera to hatch, and they should have silkworms. So the Mechaber says that you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos, and there's two svaras. One svar is tiltal muktzah, and one svar is you're creating silkworms. Your body heat is creating these worms. So the Shoyel said, so if you can't create worms with your body, so how could you wind the watch with your hand? So Rav Ozel says a yisoid that he uses in a lot of ways. And he says, the dimin is no good. Because the aleph of Shabbos is meleches machsheves. Psik reisha, davshen meschav, and it's all revolves around meleches machsheves. But the starting point before machsheves is the word malacha. You have to have a malacha. A person that's going on Shabbos, is going to shul, and he's saying a svar with his hand, and he's waving to someone with his hand, and he's using his hand to make kiddush. There's no malacha of winding a watch. Adam haylach kedarke, normal activity is not a malacha. If you wind your watch with your hands, that could be a malacha. But Adam Hailach Kedarke naturally, and moving his hand constantly, that's not a malacha of winding a watch. If there's no maleches machsheva, there's nothing to talk about. But he says, why is any sane person keeping these zera teloim on his underarm? He's mechaven to do an issa. Oh, then you have machshavas, then you have kavanah, then you call it whatever you want. But here, it's not a ma'isa issa, and there's no kavanah, because the watch is going. And that's why he feels there's no problem with this automatic watch. The Har Tzvi is also quoted as being mekel in B'yayim Azayim and Beis Cotton Hay. And basically, even the Oz Nidbru in Chelik Hay, Yutes, he mellowed somewhat, and he said, Eini Yadeh Shemet Lechatchila, Av She'ei Moichin B'nehagin Lahakol. And Lamaisa, I did see Rabbi Yashiv is quoted as saying that you could wear these automatic watches, the Kitzel Chashabis, the classic Sefer Chashabis. The only issue is, as we'll soon see, a 2 or 3 day Yomtov. We'll get back to that soon. Today they have what's called solar-powered watches. Actually, the solar power recharges the battery, and that keeps the watch. It's either sun or light. So the emphasis, we have the same heterim like we have by an automatic watch. It's probable that there's a little more of a heter with the solar watches, because there it's a step removed. You go into the sun, and that recharges the battery. Now, after the battery is recharged, then it goes more. But it could be that the automatic watches is more of a little more of a ma'isa than the solar power that you were charging the battery first. But in any case, the solar powered battery is not a problem. I'd like to pose an interesting question. Let's say a person had a watch that battery operated. He was afraid it might burn out on Shabbos or Yomtov, whatever it is. So before Shabbos, he bought a battery, and he's meyachid it with the ala yichudim. It's ois muktzah. He knew he might use it. On Shabbos, on Shabbos or Yomtov can you replace the battery? So obviously, if you can't wind a watch that stopped, avada, you can't replace the battery. But I'm wondering, like the Padam that you're allowed to wind a watch that it stopped. Can you replace the battery? Because if we say winding is mutter because it's not broken, maybe this watch is not broken. And you might even say that winding is worse than replacing the battery, because winding, you are creating all that energy, that power. Battery, the power was there. But the Shlomo Zalman, who was mekel regarding, we'll soon see, the guy be winding watches that are going especially, but he said he had 2 tshuvas. One was written to the Chazon Ish, one was written to Rabbi Zalman Meltzer, and it's quoted in the Shulchan Shloima, that even if you're mekel to wind a watch, but replacing the battery is vadiyos. The old battery might muktzah. Okay, right. But I'm talking about muktzah. But the problem, so through this, some people could change the battery. Okay, good. You're all good. But he says a better taina. Going back to tikkun keli, you can't put a new shoelace into a shoe. I'll tikkun keli shin yuzayim. That's what you're doing here. Not a shoelace, it's a battery. Winding has a maila. You're not repairing the etzem watch. This is a repair of the etzem watch, and that's why replacing the battery is also l'chol days. Good. Next question is adjusting the time. Let's say the time is off, and you're a punctual person. Can you adjust the time on Shabbos or Yom? Just move the dial. The watch is going, the clock is going. Those of you, most of you probably remember, years ago, not so long ago, they used to change the clock on the summer. A few weeks later, they do now. Now they moved it up a few weeks. I remember vividly, they once changed the clock, Matzoi Shabbos, on Pesach. Pesach was Shabbos and Sunday. And Matzoi Shabbos, they changed the clock. And all the shul yidden were like beside themselves. What are we going to do? It's the wrong time. Change the clock. Not change the clock. Old time, new time. A ganze ma'isa. Can you take off the clock off the wall and change the time? So what's the question? The same question. Is it broken? Then you can't fix it. But who said a clock that's an hour or 2 off is broken? Especially if you have a Yiddish cup. So you look at the time, it's not 10:30, it's 11:30. You don't have to be a big lamdin. Just convert it to an hour, big deal. Or it's a half hour, 30 minutes, 25 hours, not a geya. So the emphasis is, there's a famous Reb Chaim, I don't know if you ever said it, but everybody says the Bishmoi, he klerech hakira. What's worse, a watch that stopped working or a watch that's the wrong time? So everybody says the watch that stopped working is wrong. Reb Chaim says not true. The watch that stopped working twice a day is accurate. The watch that's the wrong time is inaccurate the whole day. So if he said it or not, but if that's the truth, then I could understand that a watch that's the wrong time is broken. But then again, you could, in your mind, you could convert it. And also, what are you doing? Moving dials? Maybe you give more power, you wind it. And the Bajana Rav and Das Torah Shin Lamed Ches, the end of Sif Gimel, Kedarka, very bekitza, but he has this shaila. And in a line after he throws 3 svars lahakam. First was Oimud Lakach, because it does, you have to adjust it occasionally. It's not a tikkun. It's a kli shalem, he calls it. And also, this is 10:30, no, it's 11:30. So it's not even broken. The Kelkela Shabbos that I mentioned, the Dr. Chaim Visham that I mentioned, the Ber Moshe, Oz Nidbru Tes Nun Gimel, who's machmir, even wearing an automatic watch, he's makel by adjusting the time. And I saw the Shmir Shabbos and Chav Ches Ha'ar Nun Dalid. He says, one svara is that you could adjust it in your mind. The problem is people that don't know the problem will use the wrong time. So that he says that there's no tikkun in the watch. And this point is, the shimush is to turn the dials when you have to, but it's not broken. You're not being misakin like winding up a watch. And he seems to be makel. The Kaf HaChaim in Shinches Ois Reish Pei records Minig Yerushalayim, not to adjust the time of a clock, but later in Shin Labaches Chafei, the Kaf HaChaim says, L'tzorach mitzvah ktsas, it's mutter. Lamaisa, as we saw, this most paiskim are makel. In fact, even the Chazon Ish has a problem of yitzur koyach chodosh by winding, but there's not a problem by adjusting the time. So definitely, if a person has L'tzorach mitzvah, even the Kaf HaChaim is makel, but even without that, it seems that this is not a form of tikkun keli at all. The next group of questions is muktzah, and this turns to a very fascinating turn of events in our sugya. Here's the question: can a watch that's going, is there any muktzah to a watch that's going or watch that stopped? So first of all, a watch that stopped because it's not wound, would that be a broken watch? L'chayra, we would consider a broken watch because we don't wind watches on Shabbos. Is that considered muktzah? Because right now it's stopped. So l'chayra, since our minig is we don't wind the watch that stopped, the Mishnah is chayshva deraisa, it's a broken watch. Unlike a folding table, chair that's not broken, you could open it on Shabbos. But a watch that stopped is dysfunctional, so basically it's a sheva keli. Now, if you have a fancy watch that you would wear, even if it's broken, a tachshit, a gold watch, so it's not broken. I mean, the tachshit facet is not broken. But it says the Torah Shabbos in Shinches Sifkat and Samachei, if it's ein roy leklum, because the watch stopped, so it's a sheva keli. A sheva keli is muktzah. And indeed, the Shmir Shabbos Chav Ches Sifchav says basically any watch that's not working, whether the battery burnt out or it's broken, fell down, or even if it stopped, you have to rewind it, is considered muktzah. Now, you might say, but the date is still accurate. I could use the date, but that's not the shimish of a watch. Now, this is the easy part. Someone asked me what he thought a brilliant shaila. The halacha is a basis, even if the basis is heta, the basis takes on the identity of what's a base for. A contemporary mashal, a computer desk. A desk is not muktzah. But a computer desk is a basis to the desk, and therefore a computer desk is muktzah. Right? So he wanted to know, a battery, like you all said, is muktzah. So the watch is a basis to the battery. How could you be a battery-operated watch on Shabbos? I told him you're making a mistake. Because taka, the computer table, is a base for the computer. But you don't buy a watch to hold the battery. What's me nitla b'mi? The battery is there to service the watch. So it's unreasonable to say that the watch is a basis to the battery. That's not a problem. What is a problem, and this is a beautiful aura, Rav Moshe the Gimel Simon Mem Tes was asked about a old-fashioned fan or a clock, electric clock. If you still have it, plug it into the wall and it tells time. Maybe it has an alarm to it, but you plug it into the wall and it goes, whether it's a fan, clock, refrigerator, any type of electric appliance. Someone asked Rav Moshe, is that really muktzah? Because it's going to electricity. But you're allowed to move it, let's say, you're allowed to move it, the fan turned on you to see the time. But if it's muktzah, but the het is mlachta le'issa, there's no heta michama l'tzeil. To save the keli, you can't move. Or maybe you'll say it's a klisha malachta ila heta, and it's mutter than anything else. You're allowed to move it to michama l'tzeil. So Moshe says there's a tam gadol esar because you need electricity to keep it going, and therefore it's not a klisha malachta leheta, it's a malachta leissa, and you can't move it mechama letzel. Again, you can move it for your own use if you need the makam, but not mechama letzel. So someone asked me, a battery-operated watch is also generating power from the battery. Will you tell me that it's a klisha malachta leissa and you can't move it if you left it out in the rain or a child's going to play with it, you can't move it mechama letzel? So here again, I think this question is based on an error, because the truth is, Rav Moshe's chiddush is hard to understand. Why is a clock, electric clock, considered muktzah? The fact you have to do malacha erev Shabbos plugging it in? So Ibazai gefilte fish is also muktzah. You have to go fishing erev Shabbos, you have to cook the fish. Teretz says no. If the malach is on erev Shabbos, but Shabbos you're okay, it's malach teleheta, right? That's why gefilte fish is not muktzah. So why is electric clock muktzah? You plugged it in erev Shabbos, but now it's not erev Shabbos. Now it's Shabbos. I'm not doing anything. Teretz Moshe says different yesod. If you plug it in erev Shabbos, but you still need electricity to keep it going on Shabbos. So the fact that electricity is being generated might make it a malachta lissa. His lashon is tam gadol, because you need electricity to keep it going. Once you made the gefilte fish, it's fine. According to this understanding, a battery-operated watch that does not need electricity, the electricity is all in the battery. You're not doing there's no constancy taking place. And taka, the battery-operated watch, is not a problem, even like Rav Moshe, who's chayshish by a electric appliance. And the biggest raya is in the Sefer Tiltulei Shabbos, Siman Aleph, the first tshuva. Rav Moshe was asked about a battery-operated watch. He said it's not muktzah. And I guess the Hezbollah said you don't need electricity to generate it. So therefore, to move a watch of any sort, not only but even mechama letzeil, is okay. Now, the question is, when a person is wearing a watch and it broke, either some reason it stopped working, battery burnt out, or he banged the wall, the watch is not working. What should he do? The assumption is that taking it off, he's moving muktzah. But maybe by wearing it, it's kalach hayad. So it's not muktzah biyadayim, but that's incorrect. Because the mechaba that we mentioned earlier, in Shin Ches Mem Vav, about the worms under his underarm, he says one of these surim is muktzah. You're not moving it with your hands. The teretz is, what's the darkei bekach? If that's the derech, then it's not kalach hayad. And a better raya, in Shin Ches Sif Tezvav, a sandal shenifsek ritzua chitzoina, a sandal that the Ikar Ritzua is tore, is muktzah. But I'm not moving it b'yadayim, I'm moving it b'raglayim. And that's tilted b'gufay. The teretz, if that's the normal way of moving it, sandals on the feet, not in the hands, that's tilted b'gomer. So this is Rav Shlomo Zalman Shaila in Chav Chesa or Nun Beis. What should you do? It's broken. Take it off is tilted b'yadayim. Keep it on is moving almost tilted b'yadayim. So he leaves it by tzarchian. But the Yemen I saw in the Sefer Nachlas Yisrael in Amatov Kov Beis, he points out correctly that taking it off is a maisa of tiltul b'yadayim, a new maisa tiltul. This is resuming, continuing what you've doing till now. So once it was on beheta, so to speak, whatever it is, maybe taka you're allowed to go weiter. So he thinks it's worse taka, believe it or not, to take it off b'yadayim than keep on going as it is on your hand. But you have to realize that, let's say even on Yomtov, you shouldn't be going out in Shusarabim with a watch that's broken, because it's shelo yotzer klal. So you might end up carrying it. So the best eitzah, really, which avoids all issues, very simply put, is take it off, if you can, with your teeth. A tiltul begufay of the watch, that zicha tiltul begufay. Once it's off, then of course then you drop it down, and you have no problem of muktzah at all. Today there are watches that have digital display, and you have to press a button to light up. So that the Shmir Shabbos, of course, says in Chav Ches, Chav Beis, that if there's no way of using it beheta, by pressing a button, avada, that would be an issa of on Shabbos to do, and therefore the watch becomes muktzah, because you have no way of using it beheta. Now people ask, but let's say I have a watch that's, I can see the time, but there's a feature, I want to see the date, I have to press a button. So avada, you can't press the button on Shabbos. Do I have to put a blech on the button? I mean, about a small blech. So the truth is, it makes sense, Taka, put on a blech, put on a cover, tape. But I can't say there's a chiyuv to put on a cover on that type of watch. Because the Emes Chazal made a chiyuv to make a blech. They didn't make a chiyuv to make a cover on the button on your watch. We don't have the jurisdiction to make new takanis. I always say it's probably more mustavra to put a cover on the light in the bathroom. People wake up in the middle of the night and they go in and half asleep, they put on the light. And the worst thing is when they do that, they chap, Shabbos, and they close the light quickly. So then that's even worse. So maybe make you have to put a bathroom light, a blech. Teretz says you could say what you want. You can make your own, shmiras, gedarim, but you can't make an issa d'rabbanan to wear a watch without a cover on the button. Also, the truth is, if you mechata b'gechalim, the original case of the blech, he could do 2 isurei Torah with 1 stoke. Havara of the fire, increasing the fire, and also mamar bishulai. Here, pressing this button at most is probably an LED light, is not more than the rabbanan. So Lamaisa, if you want to put on a tape on it, Tavil Lecha Bracha, you want to be Shem Shabbos and you be a Shem Sacher, you want to be very careful. Wonderful. You can't say it's a chiyuv to have a cover on the watch. As long as there are functions that are without the button, you're okay. Now someone asked me, I have never seen this before, he showed it to me, he has a new type of watch. It measures your blood pressure, heart rate, and temperature. He said at first when he used it, he got very scared because he thought he was dead. I said, why? Because he saw that numbers are so high, then he realized it was the temperature, not his heart rate. Heart rate was supposed to be in the 40s, 50s, this was like 100 or so he got nervous, 80, whatever, I don't know what it was, got all nervous. I said, so you have to be careful that these watches are a problem on Shabbos. Because as you're going, it's measuring the heart rate and the blood pressure, and there's a digital display is being changed, so every movement is causing some type of activity. We had a question about, interesting shaila, they had a wall clock on the wall, and the child that was there for Shabbos could not sleep. It was tick, tick, one of these regular clocks. They have he's getting all nervous. You want to take it off the wall, put it outside, and put it back the next morning. Is a wall clock muktzah? Can you take it off because of the noise, or you want to adjust the time, like those that are makel? So the Mishnah and Shin Ches, Sif Kat and Kuf Samaches, listen to this. He says, although the Maril held that a sand dial is muktzah, Zayger Shalanu, he's talking about probably a pocket watch or a desk clock, is not muktzah. Like I told you, because there's no medida going on. But, Vand Ur, now Ur, I was told, is a German word for clock. Vand Ur is a wall clock, Asalataltal. Why? Doesn't say why. So the Pshat is, and the Chazon Ish in Mem Gimel, Sif Yud Zayin explains, that whenever you meyachid makom, you say, I want us to stay there. Kviyas makom, Dr. Chazon Ish, is almost like, it's like a muktzah machmas chsar and kiss. No, it's not a chsar and kiss necessarily, but he brings a raya, and he says, Zeichel Dava, to this concept is the shon, the clock on the wall, that basically the Mishnah quoting Shara Tshuva says it's muktzah. Why is it muktzah? Because this is a kviyas makom. And the Shmir Shabbos in Chav Ches, Chav Aleph Taka says, if you never move the clock, there's a need for it, the clock should be treated as muktzah. Now, I told this person, if your son is always sensitive and the night he takes it out of the room, so it's not a kviyas makom. If the shul is constantly the time is being changed, so it's not a kviyas makom. But if there's a legitimate kviyas makom and a chanami, you should not move it. Next question, also fascinating because it's mamish our sugya from a different angle. Today they have toys that you wind it and the car goes and the robot walks. Today they even have swings that go. We used to push a child. Today you can't do that because it's instant society. You wind it up and it swings on its own. Can you wind a swing or toy on Shabbos? So I hope this sounds familiar. Because if you hold that you can't wind a watch that stopped because it's tikkun keli, so why is a robot or a swing any different? And Taka, the Shalma Yehuda, quoting Rabbi Yashiv, the Chutshani, Taka say winding a toy or a swing is a problem of tikkun keli. It's dysfunctional to functional. Now, Lamaisa, I would say many poskim are mekel, and the svar is pashut. The starting point is if it's broken. And these toys, they have a use in a manual form. Before you wind it, you could push the swing, b'yodayim. So how can you say it's that this tikkun if it's not broken? And Rav Shlomo Zalman, Kedarka, and Tezai Yudal, with his tremendous analytical mind, he's mekel, and he has another svara. He says a watch is broken because it's supposed to be going at all times, or at least 36 hours straight. The toy, it's not supposed to be going at all times. It's dafka when you want to use it. So this is the normal ishtamshis. Normal ishtamshis can't be tickled. And he says an interesting analogy. Many doors have it. They have it. Basically, it's a spring in the thing that connects the door to the actual door post. So when you open it, you push it open. There's a spring that gets wound, and that spring that you created by pushing the door in, that closed the door. It's an old-fashioned spring. You open the door, you turn the spring, and that closed the door. Hayal ala das, that there's an issa ticking on it, like winding up a watch. That's the normal ishtamshus. You're using it 50 times a day. You're not breaking and fixing it. And that's why he's nait to lahakol, because basically it's not broken. So you have a manual use of it, and it's not broken. And taket the bear moish and vav lamed beis shulchan alevi amad tzadik zayin amake. If you want to be very from the mahadrin, so I would advise you first push the child, and as the swing is going manually, then wind it up. So then you have a heter like winding a watch that's going. That's really mut like many poskim. The only reservation of Shlomo Zalman himself points out in Shmir Shabbos is loy techazaynish. This is a problem because by winding a toy or a swing, that's a yitzuk koyach chadash, and the fact that you could do it manually doesn't make a difference. You're creating dysfunctional koyach. So loy techazaynish, we have to step back. That attack it's us. But the other poskim don't even quote techazaynish. So basically, we have a svara to be makel, especially if you push it. Now, the question is, whenever there's an issa of winding a watch, in any case, is there any heta aidei akum? So it's very simple. Amir la'akum, to quote one Rav, he says he has a problem, the Balbatim, they think, he says they think Amir la'akum is a way of life. They don't know it's an issa chama. So Amir la'akum is awesome. But for a chayla, even anybody skana, a guy could do malacha daraisa, and for a makam mitzvah, only a guy can be asked to an issa d'Rabbanan, shvus to shvus. So now the rest is simple. The Mishnah Berurah says regarding winding a watch that stopped, the worst scenario, chayav chash d'Raisa. He says, but l'tzarich chayla hatzarich lekach. You're allowed to have a guy wind a watch. Now, why should a chayla need a watch that's wound? So maybe Yom Kippur and he has to eat with shiurim, he has to space it out in K'dei Achilas Pras. Or maybe he has to take his medicine very punctually. But a chayla needs a watch that stopped. You'll have a guy wind the watch. Even though the chayadim is machma grada, but Mishnah Berurah is mekel. Then the Mishnah Berurah says another important kula, that wind it when the watch is going, even though we're machmir, but to have a guy wind it so it should continue going throughout the Shabbos, should be muta l'chayr b'makom mitzvah, not only for a chayla, makom mitzvah. In other words, he's saying it's not a deraisa. Winding a watch that's going is not a deraisa. In fact, he says maybe even a Yisrael could do it for a chayla if there's no guy available. I mean, a Yisrael is going to be doing b'yadayim a tikkun d'Rabbanan. That's basically the klal. And the Shmir Shabbos in Chav Ches, Chav Tes puts it very beautifully. Whenever it's an Issa Deraisa, we can't have a guy do it. It's a Rabbanan, then a guy only unless for Chayla, and for a Mitzvah we can have a guy do a Rabbanan. Now people ask, I heard there's a difference 2-day or 3-day Yomtov. Is there such a halacha, the difference of a Shabbos or 2 or 3-day Yomtov? So the truth is, it's only a technical reason why there is a chiluk, and I'll explain. If a watch, the battery burnt out, so there's no difference Shabbos or Yomtov. It's muktzah, and you can't replace the battery. 2-day, 3-day, no chiluk. Where it is a big chiluk is on a regular wind-up watch or a automatic wind-up. Because again, to my knowledge, none of them could go for 3 days straight. I was told between 30 and 40 hours it goes if it's fully wound. So the problem is, you have a 2 or 3 day Yomtov, you want, and you very much want to have a tikkun on the watch. If before Shabbos you have your automatic wind, or you wound up the watch, so it's going. So even if it's be automatically wound, you don't need it. So it's leinichale. But the watch, the best watch, cannot go for 2 or 3 days. So you want to wind it as you walk. You want to use the auto wind feature. So the Shevet Alevi in Chay the Gimel, the end of Simon Tzadik Zayin, he says, although I was makel by an automatic watch, but a 2 or 3 day Yomtiv, there's a makam lahachmer. Because if it doesn't have enough power, to go for 3 days, so when you're going, you're an ichale. You want it. You can't just say, I'm just hoylach kedarka, I want it. But he says, Ein banu kayach limchais biyad nehagim lahakol. And I understand where he's coming from, because what his assumption is, it's not broken, number one, it's going, and number two, there's no ma'aseh issa. But the ma'aseh, I think, developed this chayshit for a 2 or 3 day Yomtov to avoid using a watch that automatically winds. Now, I should also add that some are mekel Yomtov Sheni because of Yomtov Sheni, even though Chas v'Chalila was also Yomtov Sheni. But the Shmir Shabbos says Chav Ches and Sif Chav Ches. In Eretz Yisrael, they don't have Yomtov Sheni typically, but he says on Yomtov Sheni in Chutz La'aretz could be allowed to wind the watch, or at least certainly in an automatic wind, because Yomtov Sheni is more kal. But he cautions not on Yomtov Sheni of Rosh Hashanah, because Yomtov Sheni of Rosh Hashanah is like 1 day. Also, he tells you to be mindful, don't wind with Tzarech Chayil. You're allowed to wind on Yomtiv for Yomtiv for Shabbos, but be concerned about the issa of course, of Achana. And the last question of Haitzah, glad we once spoke about it, and today everything's recorded, you can't repeat things, but I wanted to mention the details that we have to know. Basically, the halacha is to wear something on Shabbos when there's in a place where there's no Erev is only mutter if it's a malbush, a beged, a tachshit, or a tzorech malbush. You're allowed to wear a belt. No, it's not a malbush, it's a tzorech malbush. You're allowed to wear a tie pin and their cufflinks. The question when they started wearing watches, and again, not before 1925, they didn't even have wristwatches. Mr. Brewer says you're not allowed to wear a pocket watch, avada, that's pashut. But they started making wristwatch, you're allowed to wear it, b'shas harab, but there's no erev, a naya shayla. So most poskim say a wristwatch is none of the above. It's not a malbush, it's a watch. Not a tachshit, unless you have an expensive gechosten watch. It's not a tzorech haguf or tzorech hamalbush, it's to tell time. You know, to carry something just because you need it. It has to be one of the above heter. Rav Moshe in Chelik Aleph, Kuf Yud Aleph, and more emphatically in Chelik Heichav Dalid, Rav Moshe says his feeling is anything worn on the body, on the guf, becomes a malbush if it's worn regularly. And he doesn't just say it, he has beautiful rayas, ayin sham. But he says that a watch is hetal's malbush. So let me buy a fancy watch is a tachshit, even a plain watch is a malbush. Now, Lamaisrab Shleim Bezalman and Shmir Shabbos is also quoted as taking this approach, but the problem is, as I told you, many poskim take strong exception to this, and again, each have rayas. It's not like just approximating. It's a beautiful sugya, but I think where you could hear the shaila is today, which has become a very pressing issue. People have to go to the hospital on Shabbos. They went before Shabbos. They have to go on Shabbos, visit the patient, whatever it is, and you can't get into the hospital without an ID bracelet. A cheap piece of plastic, you keep it on your hand and you show the security guard, otherwise you can't get in. If you're going in a place where there's no Erev, are you allowed to go out without an ID bracelet? It's not a tachshit. I mean, he might feel proud that he became a father, but it's not a tachshit. It's not a malbush, and it's not a tzorech of the malbush. So the poskim say, this is a problem. You'll have to work it out with the security guard what to do, but there's a problem. Lamaisa, Rav Moshe himself says that he's choishish that even they shouldn't wear a watch on Shabbos, even l'shitasoi, because people confuse a watch with a pocket watch, and he tells his talmidim that you should not wear watches out of an erev on Shabbos at all. So that's why we don't wear watches on Shabbos. If those that wear, you can't scold them. Rav Moshe says it's mutter. The question has become a gold watch, a chosen zayga on Shabbos, is that different? So the Shmir Shabbos and Yud Ches Chav Zayin said, well, no problem, because it's a tachshit. I'm not sure why, but I think according to Rav Moshe that said not to wear a watch because you might wear the wrong watch, maybe the same chashash is by a gold watch to a regular watch. But that I'm not sure about. But I think I am sure Mr. Burin Shin Gimel Samachei says that really Mikra didn't even a tachshit is also on Shabbos. And a whole sugya why women wear tachshitim, it's only going to get used to it. Mr. Brewer says women got used to it, you could wear a tachshit. But men, he quotes Kiva Ega, should not wear a tachshit on Shabbos. So if you don't wear a ring on Shabbos, so even a watch that's a tachshit, according to Mr. Brewer, it should be a problem. I should mention women, for some reason, wear plain, cheap watches on Shabbos, that's a tzorachin. If it's not a tachshit, you're back to the original halacha, we don't wear watches. But the good news, Achrin Chaviv, a gold, a cufflink watch that basically has a watch in the cufflink, that's mutter l'chaladeis, because that's taka a tzorech malbush, and even a Moshe made a chashash by watches. This is a cuffling, and that's mutter. Guten Tag to you. That's about
the electric clock.
Yeah, that's what we should do. Plug in.
Shem Egan should tell like you be a shikert of Smith for today's share. Like you be a shikert of Rabbi Avram Eisner for sponsoring today's share. Ilinish Mas Imoy. You should hinder Basar Rabbi Avram Chaim like the outside today. That we get close to sponsoring a share. Call Egan Shir Tyra 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. There's some after Kaddish or Smith will say a seekum of today's share. Ananya Menaka Shem Rasakash Bochel Zakes is Shel Vig Hebron Tayr Mitzvah Shenema La Noich Office Aman Tzidkei Yagdol Terviyade.
Second one.
The second one is not exact clock.
Okay, good.
Okay, Rabbi, so we're working on the clock. So so we're starting the shir, the seekum right away in the watch and halachos.
Just Baruch Hashem, the Bershom created wristwatches. We had a beautiful sugya today, as you saw. But just to briefly review, the klal is if it's not broken, you can't fix it. And that's why a folding table is mutter, and knocking a thermometer down is mutter, and certainly washing plates are mutter. But the crux of the issue that we discussed today is a watch that stopped. Is it broken? If it's broken, so you could be chayshish for tikkun. So basically, as we saw today, that if the watch is not going, so even though there are makilim because it's not broken, but mishtabura is chayshish for deraisa, and that's the minik oilam across the board, that we don't wind the watch that has stopped. If it's going and you're winding it, it should continue going the entire Shabbos, although at most it's the Rabbanon, because it can't be a tikkun deraisa if it's going now, and taka, there are many that are makilim, but mishtabura, it's felt even that should be treated like a tikkun d'Rabbanan. An automatic watch on Shabbos, there is a very big tzad to be makel. A 2 or 3 day Yomtov is a makam lahachmir because there's an ichle, but on Shabbos itself, the automatic watch seems to be okay. Yomtov Sheni, some are makel an automatic watch more than a Yomtov Rishon, except of course for Rosh Hashanah. A solar battery that's recharged by going into either sun or light is okay. That's a step removed from your regular activity. Changing a battery is a real tikkun. It's like replacing the shoelaces, a new shoelace, which could be malacha deraisa. Adjusting the time, as we said, is muta. I thank you. Someone pointed it out that in some watches, especially those that go with a battery, when you adjust the time first, as you're turning it stops going. So when you adjust the time, you have to make sure that, first of all, digital, of course, you can't change because that's changing the numbers. But even on a battery-operated watch, by changing the time, it stops. And you have to complete the correction, it starts again. So that would be tantamount to stopping and starting a watch. I forgot to remember that, forgot to mention that, so thank you very much. But Lamaisa, a broken watch is muktzah. It's a muktzah, machmas gufa, is dysfunctional. If it's a tachshit as it is, it's not muktzah. If it ran out of power, l'chayr, it's the same muktzah problem, because l'maisa, it's functionless. And the fact that battery-operated watch does not make it a buses to the battery, adarabba, it's a regular kli that tells time. If a regular electric clock, you're allowed to move the tzara gufa mekayim to see the time, or you want to turn it off you, so that the light's bothering, whatever it is, you're allowed to move it your own tzarech. For a watch, it's more possible to say that it's a klisha malach de laheta, and even mutta michama letzeil, because it doesn't involve any malacha being done. There's no chiyuv to cover a button of a watch, mi'ikad din al kapanim. Various features, blood pressure, heart rate, that's the problem because everything is changing as you're moving. The wall clock is miyach, if it's miyach and makim, it's treated like muktzah. If it's not, if it's always moved, then it can't be miyach and makim, obviously. But a wind-up toy, according is mutim, like most poiskim, wind-up swing, if you wind it as you push it, the Chazon Ish had a problem of a yitzur koyach chadash. You're allowed to have a guy do any malacha deraisa for a chayla, even winding a watch that's broken, even changing the battery if need be. If it's going, then you could have a guy do it b'makam mitzvah, and perhaps even for a yid do b'makam mitzvah, for b'makam chayla, if there's no guy available. 2 or 3 day Yomtov, so there's a chumrah not to wear an automatic wind watch when you start needing the koyach. As we said, a plain watch should not be worn if there's no Erev, some are makel, but the Ramosha held not to wear a plain watch. And pashtus, even women should not wear a plain watch. A tachshit for nashim mutter, a tachshit watch for men. The Maisa, the Kivega says not to do it, but in halach it's mutter, and a cuffling watch is mutter l'chol hadays.